We are signed, we are sealed, we are delivered. It is the Pick Six Podcast with Sam McKewon. I'm Evan Bland, and our very special guest today, Tom Shatel, in the house. In the house. We are very excited about that. It is post-signing day, so Sam and I are going to get to that a little bit later, talking Super Sixes, recruiting trends, things of that nature. But we have a pressing topic to get into, first of all, with Tom. Alcohol sales at Nebraska. That's starting to be floated now. News broke here today on this, what's today, Thursday, that Nebraska's considering it for upcoming events.
For the Big Ten Wrestling Championship. Specifically that. And then after that, you know, I think they're going to have a conversation. They're going to approve the Big Ten Wrestling Championships. I'm confident of that.
At PBA.
And then they're going to have a conversation about the rest of it.
Does that surprise you guys? How does that news strike you?
Well, I think there'll be beer eventually, but I'm surprised why now. Whose idea was this to go to the regions now? I'd be curious of that. Who was it? Trev? Was it somebody else? Was it one of the regions?
Big Ten wants to make a little extra money on their event.
Is that it?
I think that's probably part of it because they sell beer at other Big Ten tournament events.
Yeah.
Well, and Trev went out of his way at his recent interview to say that they really don't make that much from beer sales, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what they said.
That was part of a study that he
They wouldn't make a lot of money up front because and all of us have been in the Memorial Stadium. The infrastructure inside Memorial Stadium. Can you imagine? I mean, the lines at the College World Series are long. Imagine them inside Memorial Stadium.
Yeah.
They'd be long now.
The beer lines of the World Series aren't bad. I mean, you don't really see a lot of people drinking beer. You know, maybe out in the bleachers you do, but behind home plate and stuff, they're just people. I mean, it depends on the game. If it's Mississippi State, there's a million people everywhere. I mean, I remember last year you couldn't walk in the concourse, and I kept thinking nobody has a mask. They probably all have COVID from Mississippi, and I'm going to die. But no, I'm glad they were there. It was just like, this is kind of, after we just watched NC State go home, this is interesting. But no, they're great fans, but they were everywhere. And so I couldn't tell what they're just getting everything. So the beer at the World Series is fine. It'll be fine at Nebraska events. It will be. It'll be a few, people who can't handle it. But I think it'll be self-policed because Nebraska fans want to do things the right way. And so I'm just, again, where did this come from? Who? Because I think, they could have said no. I mean, they to the Big Ten. I think Nebraska wants to do it. I think this is a way to do it. But I wonder if there was anybody on the inside who kind of pushed this.
Yeah, I think that's what we're still reporting out for the rest of the day. My sense is, and I've talked to Trev multiple times, as have you, about alcohol sales at the stadium. The problem with Memorial Stadium, the football stadium, is the infrastructure is not really in place, that they have to bring in the machines. And honestly, the space issue would be a problem because right now, when you think about Memorial Stadium concourses, almost all of the people, for example, from South Stadium and North Stadium descend all the way to the floor of the stadium to go get food. There's not like there's not necessarily a secondary place to go.
Right.
So you got to go all the way down. And a lot of times, if you're buying a runza, you're buying it from a kid who's standing next to a post, next to a column, with money in his hand, scrunched against the valves guy. You can't do that with beer.
There's no reason to do it in Memorial Stadium until it's ready.
Right.
They did it for the.
Garth Brooks.
I didn't go. I don't know how it worked, but they did it for that. But I think it'll be fine. But they don't have room for all the lines and all that stuff. So, but they do it Haymarket and they do it at the basketball arena. Yeah. So do it there and just ease into the football. There's no hurry to do football beer. There's plenty of beer outside. There's plenty of beer downtown. There's plenty of beer inside people who go to the games. Take a 3-hour break to sober up. So I think it'll be there eventually, but there's no hurry. I mean, get the stadium rebuilt or do what you're going to do in terms of the the restructuring, I mean, clearly they want to have a club. They want to have not the club that we see in the suites. They want to have like a Husker restaurant.
A swanky club.
Well, or just someplace for, somebody who wants to just, Joe Public to go and, I've got money. I want to sit down and watch the games, other games, and watch the Husker game. And
yeah.
I mean, so
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be. It'll be like the Lexus Club at the Creighton games, and so and that's it has the name Lexus on it. But I've been in there, and there's people from all kind of walks of life in there. So they've all got the good tickets, but they're in there, and it's not it's not Grey Poupon deal. It's not that. So I think. Then I also think you have to do some kind of a fan area like they have at Creighton. I've written this, and people, we don't compare Creighton to Nebraska. Well, half the people at the Creighton games are Husker fans too, so we're all the same. So I think it's a great idea to have an area where people can socialize. I think get all that done first. Anyway.
It's interesting because, like, Nebraska currently is the outlier. We travel around the Big Ten and see there are a lot of alcohol sales.
There are
at stadiums, not everywhere, but at a lot of places.
And it's not a drunken mess anywhere we go.
No,
Wisconsin a little, but nowhere else.
Mm-hmm. To me, it's more like the paradigm shift where, forever it's you go to a Nebraska game, you get a Runza, you get a Pepsi. It's this kind of wholesome family environment, or that's sort of the feel, and so. I think that's the big thing is just people wrapping their minds around the idea that you can go watch Casey Thompson throw footballs and have a beer. You can go watch Mojo Hagee and left and have a beer. Like it's just something that people haven't been able. No, he's not back.
It's just part of the game. And, I think wrestling is a good place to start because the wrestling fans, especially in the Big Ten, go to those things to watch wrestling. They're not there to socialize. I mean, I go to high school wrestling matches once in a while. I've got friends who have kids who wrestle, so I go. And my dad was a wrestling coach, so I used to hang out as a kid at those things. So I still go eventually, every once in a while. But people there are there to watch wrestling, and they're intent on watching the match. And they're for that 6 minutes, they're into that match. They ain't worried about going to get a beer. They're not, the people hardly even do concessions at those things. I mean, they do, but it's not like, well, I can't go stand in line for 20 minutes. I might miss something. Right. So, I think the wrestling is probably a pretty good place to start.
Yeah, I think they'll sell some beer if Iowa fans are in there. That'd just be my thought.
Well, Nebraska fans like
they do.
They do. Don't give it to Iowa.
They do. I think, but. The last time the Big Ten Wrestling Championships were here, I don't think they were. It was the Big 12 Wrestling Championships, I think, the last time they hosted it. We were both there. And Iowa State brought a bunch of fans. Iowa will bring a legion of fans. When they had the NCAA Championships here that year, Iowa had a bunch of people here. Did they have beer at the NCAA tournament at Arkansas?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And don't you feel like that maybe contributed to some of the stuff that Mojo Hagee got? Some of the grief he got?
Yeah, a little bit, but it was a great atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I think Haymarket Park would be such an interesting place because, as we said, the infrastructure's already there. There have been days where, Nebraska plays and I'll go cover the game or whatever, and I'll be there as they transition to a Salt Dogs game later in the day. And it's just really interesting because they roll out the beer carts and they turn on the kegs and open them up and people come in, and it's just a totally different deal. But, it's a beer at a baseball game. Like, Nebraska's already a top 25 team in terms of the crowds that they draw nationally. Yeah. Imagine if you could, have a cold one or two in April and May.
The question is, what do they sell? Because it's probably like, how the University of Nebraska is a Pepsi school. What is the offerings? Okay, obviously Bud Light, probably Miller Lite.
Probably anything local?
Well, that's the question, right? Like, you have to sign with a distributor, and usually the distributor has its own little, but do you bring in, and what would the local one be? Would it be a zip line?
Maybe
Would you have a zip line tap?
Yeah.
Like, what would you do? So, like, there's all those kind of questions.
Mm-hmm.
I would think it would be zipline.
Seems popular.
Maybe not, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That would be interesting to chart, because I can't remember what they had at the Garth Brooks concert. I took a photo of it, and I can't remember what the local beer was. I think it was zipline.
And they sold out, like before the concert started,
yeah.
way before, huge lines.
Well, yeah.
I think concerts are different.
They are.
But
For other substances other than beer.
But I think pro football is maybe the worst.
Agreed.
And I don't think NBA is anything like that. I don't think Major League Baseball is anything like that. I think the NFL, I don't know what it is, but just the general tenor of the game, or the violence, or the mentality, or whatever. But but I don't think college. My only concern about college football is Nebraska football is a different animal. It's so emotional. It's just different. You can't. It's not basketball. It's not baseball. When the team loses, when a bad play happens, anger and just raw emotion.
We heard nasty stuff last year at the end of a couple games. End of that Purdue game, there was a couple fans saying things to Adrian Martinez that I had never heard fans say to a Nebraska quarterback before. Never.
Well,
and Adrian's a good kid, and there were people saying stuff to Adrian that was rough.
Well, and the way Iowa came back and won, there were enough Hawkeye fans in the stands where you wondered, will there be fights? You know, so you wonder there will be those kind of things, but it's not going to keep beer from. They're not going to not do it because of that. So they're going to just have a few fights probably and expect people to be on their best behavior. But again, I've always thought this was. Something we always talk about, and it never happens. It's going to happen. I mean, they're obviously going to pass it next week, I think, and that just the fact that it's on their docket, it's going to pass. So, but how did it show up there? Who made this happen? It's very interesting.
Talking about changes going on, all kinds of changes, more football-related changes, and you wrote about this, Tom, was the transfer portal, and coming off of signing day, Nebraska signs, or I guess they don't sign, but they welcome in 10 transfer portal additions. 9 are already on campus. As you've chewed on kind of this new reality of recruiting and player movement, like, where do you come down on, is this good for football? Is this, how do you feel kind of about where this is going?
I really like the transfer portal. I like the fact that it's fun. It's kind of exciting, right? It's wow. All of a sudden you get all these new guys in here, and I'm thinking about what it would be like in Nebraska right now if you didn't have it. And basically had the same roster coming back next year. Wouldn't be nearly as much optimism, obviously guarded optimism, right? We all know
that's a really good point.
But just think about
yes, that's right.
I mean, Scott Frost needs it. He needs all these guys just to. And then, you'd have new coaches with the same players. And college football is a player's game. It's not a scheme game. So these new players give them a chance to have a different a different outcome. So, we're kind of looking at it. Well, how are you going to do this? The question yesterday were all about the offseason. It was an offseason press conference. And that's the new college football. I'm okay with it. I think the players will figure out for themselves, just because I transferred doesn't mean it's not going to work out. But they're all dreamers. They're all going to transfer. It's not going to curtail. As long as you're able to do it without sitting, these guys are going to move. And they're all going to think, I'm the guy. It's because 2 other quarterbacks doesn't matter. I'm better than them. And they'll find out the hard way. A lot of them will. But that won't stop them, and it won't stop coaches from. The guys on the hot seat have to have transfers. Guys who think I'm just a player or 2 away from being a contender. Boy, I go out and get these guys. It's 2022. Who wants to wait on anything? Nobody. We all want it now. And so you bring all these recruits in, and they're I can't even see this guy. It's 2 or 3 years away, or. that's the part I think that I don't like. But I think it'll hurt college football development. And I hope that the development still exists with a lot of these programs. I think it will at the top programs who don't have to have the transfers because they've already got the best players. Alabama doesn't have to have transfers. Now they will take them, but then they also develop guys. And I hope
they took 2, and they were both 5-star guys at other schools.
And Alabama already has those.
The
guys.
best running back coming back for this year is Jahmyr Gibbs, probably from Georgia Tech. He's also a returner. That's who Alabama got.
Yeah, but they've already got those guys.
Like a 3-year starter.
Yeah. But they've already got him, right? They've already got all those guys lined up. I mean, so he's coming in knowing that he may not be the guy. So, but I just hope that the development, that's the best part. And I think back to, I really think this is going to help Nebraska. Ultimately, the transfer portal will make Nebraska better because you can't get the best recruits here all the time. You're not going to rank in the top 10 in recruiting. If you get in the top 20, that's a hell of a deal, right? Because the old thing, it's hard to get people to come. The kids don't know about Nebraska tradition. They don't care. It's a team. It's a program that's been losing on and on. But so you get transfers to come in. And those guys, opportunity to play is their big deal. So, you're in the Big Ten. You're this, you're that. You got fans and the NIL, and this is great. And so I think the transfer portal could help Nebraska. It will help Nebraska football. But you got to have the coaches. You got to be able to get those, you kind of have to coach on your feet. You get, be light on your feet. You got to do it quick.
Yeah.
So as long as you have the staff in place, I think it helps Nebraska.
The buzzword the last 10 years, a word that just used way too much, is the word guardrails, and yet I'm going to use it here. I think that the transfer portal is actually a pretty good thing for all of college football, including Nebraska, but you need to put some guardrails in. And Sports Illustrated had a story today, Ross Dellinger, who's always does a really good job with this stuff, talking to people about the possibility of you have a window, a specific transfer portal window, and within that window, 2 things are true. One, if you transfer within that window, you get immediate eligibility. If you don't transfer within that window, you don't. That's one thing. The second thing is the dead period does not apply to that part of the window, because one of the things that Scott Frost talked about yesterday was we couldn't even bring these guys in to look at the program, some of them. They brought some of them in, but they couldn't bring some of these guys in to look at the program because there was a recruiting dead period.
Yeah, that first week in January.
So ideally what you would like to see is a sort of guardrail system that says, okay, ditch the December signing period for high school football. Just get rid of it. Gone. JUCO stays in, but get rid of the high school signing period. Either have a July, February, or just February. Create a window for the transfer portal that starts, first week of December, ends first or second week of January, because guys have to transfer to schools. Let them have visits. That's your transfer. That's your free agency season. After that, it closes. And here's the one thing that will stop, and this is part of what Luke McCaffrey used last year. And quite frankly, I think a few transfers are using as well. If you start your semester at your new school, at your current school, you stay on scholarship, and then you put yourself in the portal, and then you transfer. This would end that. It would not only end that practice of, I'm going to stay here for about a week and start classes, and then I'm going to go into the portal. It would also end the practice of kids transferring after 4 games because they don't want to burn their red shirt. And it would also end the practice of transferring before a bowl game or 9 games into a season because you want to get ahead of the thing and be able to visit a school in late November so that you can go there like players will do. If you can create those guardrails, I think everybody wins. I think you have a free agency period that lasts 1 month from December to January, and then you have high school recruiting again, and nobody's trying to get cute about when they transfer. And then that way, I feel like it all happens at one time. We have a press conference in mid-January where Frost comes in and talks about his 14 transfers, and then there's another one in February to announce the high school kids.
Maybe add one in May too, coming out of spring ball.
Or
I think there's going to be a lot of movement.
They would
there.
have another one then. Yes.
Or in their case, they'd probably just have one press conference.
Yeah. Well, they had two this year, to give them credit. They had one in December, and it was both very windy days in December and yesterday.
Right.
The wind was blasting.
But they wouldn't have three. They wouldn't do December, January, and February.
I'm saying they get rid of the December signing day.
Right.
I would get rid of that. I would dump it.
Yeah.
I think the high school kids can wait till February. You have a mid-January signing transfer, and then you have a February for the high school kids, and then maybe I would add a late July for high school. So I'd say if you have 7 guys that you know, no matter what, you want in your program, regardless of what transfer comes open, sign them then sign your transfers, and then if you have a few less spots left, there you go.
What if you have a signing period and you're able to sign whenever you want?
Well, but the problem is that creates what we have now, which is a system where kids are transferring all the time, and it's almost impossible for the coaches to get their arms around it.
But I mean, if you're a high school kid and you want to get it over with, I don't want to wait until February. I'm tired of it. I want to sign right now.
Right.
What's wrong with that?
Oh, nothing.
Yeah.
I know. I think
that's what I'm talking about.
If that's what they wanted to do, I think that's fine. The period aspect of it is designed to honestly put the schools in a position to lock in their relationship.
Well, the other problem is transfers count as scholarships.
They do.
So
most of the time.
Well, so how many scholarships do you have available? Well, we don't need to take all these high school kids because we need transfers.
They allow 32.
Yeah.
If you lose 7 to other schools, which Nebraska did, they allow 32 to be signed. Right. So right now Nebraska's at 28 or 29, depending on what number you use. In theory, Nebraska can sign 3 more transfers and count that back to the recruiting class.
That's why it makes sense to delay the high school signing day, because you don't want to sign too many high school kids if you can't have transfers. So all these are good ideas. I have no idea who's going to be in charge of making them happen.
I think the NCAA wants to do something with the transfer window at the very least. And Scott, I think Scott has been sort of schooled a little bit to stop giving his broad opinion on some of those issues.
I noticed that yesterday. He got burned. He's been burned so many times. I mean, people are just – he's been a punching bag for the national guys.
Right.
He likes to talk. So,
but he made a good point about not being able to bring Casey. I mean, he didn't say Casey Thompson, but Casey Thompson couldn't take an official visit to Nebraska. Yeah. He and his dad had to walk around campus and do a FaceTime, and that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Get rid of that. Let there be a transfer free agency period. Then you go back to the high school kids.
Right.
I never have liked the December signing date. I don't get it. I think it was put in place because college coaches got tired of trying to hold on to their class till February. To me, keep December for transfers. February becomes the high school kid.
Yep.
Hoops. Let's talk little hoops. Nebraska 0-10 now in the Big Ten?
0-11.
0-11. Okay. The number continues to grow. There is a positive. Bryce McGowens continues to have a pretty good season. Another freshman of the week. Looks like continues to be a lottery sort of prospect potentially. I don't know. Is that the bright spot of this season as you guys see it? What he's been able to do, and can what he's done this year generate any momentum for future talent coming in to try to turn this thing around?
Oh, bright spot, yeah. I mean, but it's just recent. I mean, he's just getting started, so we don't know what he's going to. I think for the rest of the season, rest of the month, rest of the season, watching him go to become this. He's like somebody that's the light has just come on, and it comes on more and more every game, and he's learning how to handle the physicality. He knows where to go. He knows what he can do, what he can't do. If they try to muscle him up on defense, he's figured out a way to still do what he wants to do. It's great. Do we think he'll be back next year? Probably not. I mean, everything right now says he's he's going to be a late first round. So, which probably means he'll go. If he's first round, I think you have to go. Will impact future guys? I don't know. I mean, I look at that and what he's doing, and what's his impact going to be? I don't know, because is his coach going to be here? Well, I think he'll be here next year, but will there be other five-star guys lining up to come to Lincoln and finish last? Probably not, because they sent him to the NBA. That's what they care about. Hoiberg's the NBA man. Is he sending you to the NBA? Yeah, I like that. I like that angle. Does that mean they're going to line up and come back here? I don't know. It's just kind of a mixed bag, because he did play. And the other guys are going to see that he got to play, and he went to the NBA, but they didn't win, and they're probably going to finish last or next to last, and so I don't know the impact of it. My thing is, I don't think they're going to be lining up to come to Lincoln. I think he was an unusual case because of his brother. So, but we'll see. But that has to be determined.
Who does he remind you of in your however many years of watching college basketball, and you've seen a lot? Is there anybody that you think of in the past that comes to mind when you watch Bryce?
Yeah, Nebraska or just anywhere?
Anywhere.
Oh, boy. Not off the top of my head, no. I mean, I haven't really thought about it.
Yeah. He's a good scorer. Like, he right. Really is I don't know that I would describe him as a great defender or intangibles, but in terms of pure scoring, I mean, he's as good of a scorer as Nebraska's had in a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Maybe since Piatkowski's a different player. I
right.
get that.
I was trying to think over the years.
He's a great scorer.
I mean, where does he rank in raw talent, skill set for Nebraska history? Way up there.
Yeah.
Got to be. So, yeah, that's a great question, but he's very unique. We didn't get to see him. Right now, he's just starting to get going now, and now we're seeing the guy that he can become. So, but I wish it was like Max Anderson. We'd probably get to see him a bunch of years. Hopefully, maybe you never know when he'll go. But boy, you saw him as a freshman.
He's got 3 years. Has to stay 3 years.
Yeah, so raw talent. He gets 3 years. So raw talent, you get to see this guy develop. But in this case, you better go out and see him. The next month, you probably won't get to. So
I know Nebraska, wants him to stay.
Of course,
I think it'll come down to an NIL operation. Can somebody step up with an NIL deal that can match what Bryce might enjoy with an NBA contract? And then the other question becomes, there is a difference between the 30th pick and the 9th pick. And I think if you watch Keegan Murray and Johnny Davis this year, both of whom I think are better players than Bryce at this moment.
Yeah.
Keegan and Johnny, Davis and Murray, went from second-round picks to lottery picks. But they didn't do that as a freshman. Like the freshman lottery pick is reserved for the 7-footer at Gonzaga, who I think has a lot of work to do, but he's 7 foot. The kid at Duke, who's legitimately really, really good. He's probably the best freshman in the country. Jabari Smith, who's an elite player for an elite team at Auburn. So there's some pieces in there that I think are notable, and I think Bryce can get to that point, but he probably needs a second year because he's probably not going to be a lottery pick. And there is a difference between bottom of first round, lotto pick. And Nebraska can probably get him there.
Maybe, but the key is, what's his brother going to do?
I think that's true, yeah.
And the other thing is, he saw his brother get hurt and had a half a year taken away from him, and who knows how that impacts his future.
That's a great point.
So if you're healthy and then you're drafted, a lot of times you got to go because you come back and you saw what happened. I mean, it's all a gamble, absolutely. But I mean, yeah, I think end of the first, We've seen the guys at Creighton go around there, and they spent a lot of time in the G League. So it's that's might be where he ends up next year.
Was Patton? Was he 15 or 16?
Yeah. So
and he never. Now some of that's on him that he didn't make it to the end.
He was so young. He did.
But he should have stayed another year.
He needed another year.
And Mac thought that.
You can't tell those guys that. The family has to get involved, and you just got to let them go, because when it's time to go, it's time to go. But anyway,
but Bryce isn't going to get to where Patton was after 1 year in terms of his draft pick, because Patton, I think, was mid-first round. Bryce isn't getting to mid-first round.
But we don't know. It's early February. We don't know how he's going to play the rest of the year, and a lot of that draft stuff happens in the spring with the workouts.
Right.
Will he get a chance to go to the combine? I don't think he will. Will he? I don't think.
I think so.
Did they invite freshmen?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Banton went to it last year. He wasn't a freshman.
But a lot of those guys are going to, a lot of that stuff happens in the spring.
Yeah.
So, but at this point, I'd just say whatever happens to him, go watch him play, because and I'm sure the crowds will start to be down now for Nebraska basketball. It's not looking good. They've got a couple 8 o'clock starts. Those are always bad, and attendance is probably not going to be great. But if you go, you're gonna see something you may never see again. Who knows?
That's right.
All right.
Start playing that Simon and Garfunkel song, "The Sounds of Silence."
Well, that's been played in Nebraska for many years. Gentlemen, it's been fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
I've got to go do other things. So
thanks for joining us for a half hour.
See ya.
we'll do it again.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Well, let's talk some signing day
stuff.
Sam. We've been neck deep in roster churn and additions and departures for the better of 2 months now. And one of my favorite exercises, and I imagine you would say the same, is filling out a Super Six. And this year it's a little bit different because Nebraska
247 puts this together.
They do.
Appreciate Mike Schaefer and
they put it together.
Brunt's doing that, and BC. They do a good job of this. They compile it. They ask about 30 people, and then they come up with a list. We're happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's great. And we talk to these guys and watch film and all this. Not that we're professional scouts or coaches by any means, but
I watch a lot of film.
Yeah.
A lot.
So this year it factors in the transfers in addition
I've watched
to
every play of Casey
high school
Thompson's
guys.
twice now.
Okay.
There's a YouTube video that gives you every play.
Every single one.
Oh, yeah.
From Texas? Or
Yeah.
Texas, college career.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Do you want to start top going down, or what do you think?
Well, let's just go back and forth. Super
Okay.
Six, back and forth.
Yeah.
First things first, the way that they did it this year, and I appreciate this, is they included transfers and high school kids.
Right.
There are high school kids that I think, I would have been fine putting in my top six that aren't, because we have transfers.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the best way to go going forward, because I think a lot of times what you have to do is balance the potential of a guy for 4 seasons against the immediate impact of a guy for 1 or 2. And I think that's actually a good exercise to go through.
How did that break down for you, by the way? How many of your 6 are transfers and how many are high school guys? Because I'm half and half.
Mine is 4 and 2. 4 transfers, 2 high school kids, and the second high school kid no one else had.
Okay.
So that'll be that's number 6.
Okay.
No one else had I don't think anyone else had my other high school kid. Let's talk briefly about the high school class. It turned out to be 18 players.
Right. Plus JUCOs, yeah.
Plus JUCOs. A lot of skill guys in that group. I think a really, really elite high school class has great linemen in it, and this does not.
This does not, no.
It doesn't have that. They've got to figure out a way to get... Now, probably the hardest thing to recruit in college football is elite front 7 players. Texas A&M is going to kick the shit out of people for the next however many years, because that's what they got. And it's how you stop the run and you get after the quarterback. And if you look at, what elite teams do, this is what they do. They get after the quarterback and they stop the run. Georgia, Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati had a great secondary. That helped. But generally speaking, that's what they do. Nebraska didn't get those players. They don't have a great pass rusher. They don't have a great lineman. They don't even have a Blaze Gunnerson in the class, which I think is concerning. They've got to figure out a strategy on how to get elite defensive linemen and elite pass rushers. Outside of that, I thought it was a pretty good class of skill guys. But unfortunately, at Nebraska, skill is often unproven. Like, they just don't get it done here.
We've seen it a lot.
Demarion Houston didn't get it done. Who was the other guy? Jamie Nance didn't get it done. Darian Chase didn't get it done. Sevion Morrison didn't get it done. Who am I missing? Other
Marvin
guys that were
Scott,
four-star
sure.
players didn't get it done. Maurice Washington, super talented, mess off the field. So time to see some skill guys actually hit. And of course, naturally, I have a skill guy in my top 6. So let's start. Do you want to start with a sleeper?
I feel like we might have some of the same guys at the top, so why don't we address those first
Okay.
and work our way down.
Cool.
So I had Casey Thompson, number 1. I think that's fairly obvious. And in part because, if you think back to Nebraska's recruiting offseason, they went the whole month of December without landing anybody. And there was serious, I think, anxiety, at least externally, about is it really going to be Chubba Purdy, who has been a long-time reserve, who could be that guy? Are they really going to go with what they have into this critical year? And so to land Casey Thompson, who is an accomplished passer and quarterback at Texas, who's been through the meat grinder of expectations in the media at a big school, and then just to see what he's done in terms of taking his linemen out and how he handles himself, I think that's about as good of a land as Nebraska could have gotten at a position that they had to have somebody in a year when they have to show progress and make a bowl game. I think Casey Thompson, whether he's here a year or 2 years, has to be number 1 in terms of impact.
I agree. I mean, I think that the number one thing that Thompson brings to the table, and again, this is watching a lot of his games, is he's I think pretty well liked by his teammates. I think he's got a positive, almost just a sharp guy, positive energy. I think guys want to play for him. I think he's good at identifying, when a guy's open early. He knows how to press downfield.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's got relatively good confidence. He's relatively mobile. He throws the ball fine. I think he's a pretty good pickup. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's going to be as good as Caleb Williams, and I think the Big Ten the Big Ten West dodged a bullet when he didn't pick Wisconsin. I think Caleb Williams has got some ability, maybe Thompson doesn't have, but I think he's got a lot of things good in the table. And the other thing that I think is good about Thompson is he's going to be coached by a quarterback coach who really knows how to coach a pocket quarterback. Now, I don't think that Whipple is averse to mobility, but I do think that Mark Whipple is going to teach this guy how to throw the football in the pocket and how to read a defense on a football field and throw the throws that need to be thrown.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds kind of stupid, but and let me say this. Maybe the most gifted quarterback any of us have ever seen is Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not sure Patrick Mahomes knows how to do some of those things. I think Patrick Mahomes would actually benefit from a guy like Mark Whipple coaching him. I think Patrick Mahomes is coached by Andy Reid? I don't know. But Mahomes is unbelievably gifted, and they lost the game. They were both in the AFC Championship because he's so gifted, and they lost that game because of his second half, where he refused, and this was the same as the Super Bowl the year before. He refused to throw the ball to open men for first downs. He was too busy trying to do the other stuff. And Casey Thompson will take the lessons, I think, that Whipple teaches and move the football for Nebraska. There's a way of thinking about how you play offense that is just different from the way that we think about it. And I think the way that you think about offense isn't just explosive plays and, touchdowns, but ball control, field position, plays building on one another. And when you absolutely effing need a play in the fourth quarter, you've got it because you built your way to it. And I think too often in games, Nebraska, they get to the fourth quarter, they would have had great 3 quarters of football. they get to that fourth quarter and they don't have that play in their back pocket anymore because
Nothing
they used
left.
it in the first quarter.
Right.
So Thompson's my number 1 too.
My number 2 is Trey Palmer, LSU transfer, for a couple reasons. One, other than Thompson, he's the only guy that Nebraska added who was an established contributor at a Power 5 level.
Right.
I mean, he's returned touchdowns and punts. He's caught touchdown passes in big SEC games. And I think additionally, he is coming in at a position Nebraska woefully needs some kind of playmaker or returner in the special teams game. And so to bring him back, he was, I think, top 40 nationally, more than 6 yards per punt return.
Yeah.
I mean, you bring him in immediately, you're not going to be second to last in the country in punt returns, and you're going to have a threat at kickoff with where someone can break it and take it to the house. And as we've seen so many times, Nebraska's on the other end of that when someone else makes a big play and it flips the game. So I think there's that. And if you've talked to him, and I've talked to Trey Palmer, for 20, 25 minutes, the confidence oozes out of this guy.
Sure.
I mean, he's totally self-assured. He's a 5-star recruit, according to at least one service. I mean, this is a guy who believes he can get it done. He's here because of his relationship with Mickey Joseph. So you got to figure that he's solid as long as Mickey Joseph and that staff is here. So I think that combination of track record with opportunity and that ability all will come together. He's my number 2.
He's a big guy. I mean, he's not small. He's not Jamal Turner. He's not 5'11". He's 6'1" and 190. I mean, big. I mean, receivers that are 6'1" and 190 are pretty big guys. Let's be honest. They're not the biggest guys, but they're pretty big. I'll be curious to see where they use him. I'll be curious to see who he pushes. I have him 4th on my list. Some of it's returns. Some of it's I feel like the guy does a pretty good job of getting open. Yeah, I like Trey Palmer's picture. I think he's going to be a good player. I don't know if he's going to be great, but I think he'll be a contributor at Nebraska. 25, 30 grabs. Yeah. I don't think he's as talented as Omar Manning or Xavier Batts. I don't. That's not a knock on him.
Yeah.
I think Xavier Batts is, easily one of the 5 or 6 most gifted receivers in the country. I just don't think there's a question of that. The question has never been his physical ability. It's everything else. It's consistency. It's staying on the field, all those things. And I really do expect Mickey Joseph to fix that. So he's 4th on my list, Palmer. Who's 3rd on yours?
The third guy on my list I think I put higher than probably anybody in the Super 6 was Ernest Hausman.
Okay.
And I've talked about this on this podcast before, but I've put more value in the guy who is in state, who grew up a Husker fan. That's why I put Garrett Nelson higher than I think anybody a couple cycles ago, because he bled it. I mean, he knew the history, he was passionate about it, and you knew he was going to do, even if he wasn't pound for pound the most talented guy, he was going to do what it took to get to that point. And I kind of got those vibes in Hausman when you talk about being from Columbus, his background growing up, just to get to this point. I think for me, it's a lot of intangible stuff. Like, he has the appreciation for the opportunity. He deeply cares about the program. The offers that he had, I think other schools saw that ability too. And then you look at what Barrett Root has done with inside linebackers at Nebraska. I think he could be a guy who, maybe is certainly a 2-year starter, maybe a 3-year starter down the road, and somebody who's going to be solid for this program. He's my number 3.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a good player. He would have been in my Super 6 if it had just been all high school guys. I'll go to my number 2. My number 2 is Omar Brown, the corner from Northern Iowa. He was an FCS All-American as a freshman. I think he's been pretty good since then. What I would say about FCS guys from the Missouri Valley is they're playing competition that is comparable, in my opinion, to Conference USA, Sun Belt. A lot of these kids come from big state schools that are well supported, have good facilities, are in very competitive leagues. If you took North Dakota State and you said, North Dakota State for this 1 year, you're going to go play in the Sun Belt, I like North Dakota State's chances to go 9-3 and maybe even win the league, and that's Coastal Carolina and some other teams, Appalachian State. These big state schools in the Missouri Valley are legit. the same is true for the big state schools in the Big Sky. I mean, Montana and Montana State have a lot of resources. They have great weight rooms. They have good football players. They have well-paid coaches, all that. And so I think sort of a, whatever you want to call it, a hack going forward for Nebraska, a transfer portal hack, is to look very, very hard at the FCS, specifically the Big Sky and specifically Missouri Valley, and recruit the hell out of it and try to get 2 to 4 players each year from those two, combined from those two leagues. Because a lot of those kids can play at this level, and a lot of them already know what it's like to play in shitty weather. And that's important. That's important. That's something that is not always easily learned. Trey Palmer is going to learn it. A.J. Allen's going to learn it. You know, like these guys are going to learn that, oh, my God, you know, November or whatever at Penn State sucks. Well, these Big Sky and these Missouri Valley guys already know that. I mean, they've already been through it, and they've experienced it. So Omar Brown is my number 2.
Okay. My number 4, you mentioned him, A.J. Allen, the signing day pickup. I mean, that's I watched some of his film too, and kind of like Scott Frost said at his presser, I mean, he can do, and it looks like he can do just about anything that you want.
Yeah.
He's got the balance. He has the big playability that Nebraska running backs haven't had in a while. I think his first highlight from his sophomore season was pass blocking, was knocking back a linebacker who's coming at his quarterback. And so I think you put all that together. This is a high-end guy. And again, it's at a position where Nebraska struggled to find that feature back for so long, for so many years. I mean, Azigbo, okay, Dedrick Mills kind of was that guy. But we see it all over college football every single year where freshmen can come in, and if you're going to break out at a position, running backs is as likely as any of them. And so whether it happens this year in 2022 or down the road, he just to me is a guy who has all the tools, and it's at a position that they're just thirsty for somebody to take that job and run with it. He's my 4 for his potential over the next 3 to 4 years.
He's my 3, so he's my highest-rated high school player. His game reminds me of Aaron Green, who was at Nebraska not very long. He transferred after 1 year to TCU and had a great career at TCU. He rushed for 2,500 yards on teams that were better than Nebraska. I think 930 his junior year, and his senior year, I think somewhere around 1,200. He was a good player. And Allen compares to that. He's very explosive, very athletic, about the same size, 5'11", 5'10", 185, explosive to the edge, is sort of a tighter set guy, has sort of a stutter step thing that he's able to do. Dead leg, he's got a dead leg move, he can spin. There's a lot of things that he can do, and I kind of thought that that's who Ramiro Johnson was going to be. Ramiro has been much more a straight line, downhill
Sprinter,
kind of
yeah.
slasher.
Mm-hmm.
And if Ramiro were 20 pounds bigger and a couple inches taller, that'd be a really good. It doesn't quite work for what he's trying to do. Yeah, he's got to get a little bit more elusive after the initial surge through the line. He's got to be, Ramiro is probably going to be the odds-on favorite to be the starter. Him or Anthony Grant, and Ramiro's got to get a little bit better at getting through a hole clean and not running into the thigh of his lineman. And then when he gets to the second level, he's got to be able to bounce it, or he's got to be able to squeeze back inside. The thing I like about Allen is he can run the outside of a hole, and he can jump cut back inside if he has to, and that's always real hard for a defender. Because if a defender thinks that, your cutback has to be a cut, they can usually get there. But if you're able to sort of hop in midair and boop, boop, back inside, then that can be hard for defenders to manage. Nebraska didn't play a lot of great running backs last year, did they? They did. I mean, Brandon Allen's going to be really good.
Kenneth
Tyler
Walker.
Goodson, yeah. Well, no, yeah, they did. That's true. Kenneth Walker really struggled against Nebraska in part because he's got a lot of moves and they weren't working. And when you try to, the thing about Walker is he likes to run wide, and it's really hard to run wide on Nebraska last year because of JoJo Doman. He couldn't do it. He just couldn't. They're pretty. Nebraska's pretty good against wide. If you try to run wide on them, either with a jet or a wide zone or toss, It's very hard to get Nebraska off balance. It's when you run in between the tackles and all of a sudden Braylon Allen pops out the other side.
Right.
That's the problem. So they did face some good running backs last year. I think A.J. Allen has a chance to be really good. Your next one.
Number 5 for me was Jaden Gould out of New Jersey. I think he seems like one of the guys who is more evolved as a player. Like, he just seems to have some instincts in the film that I've seen. He can anticipate throws. And, you know, I think part of it, too, is Travis Fisher's history recruiting in Nebraska's secondary. He's so often made more with less. I mean, Cam Taylor was not a super highly regarded player that he developed. You know, he found Deontay Williams out of junior college. So, like, and a lot of the higher end guys that he found left, whether that was the 2020 class with so many Florida guys, you know, Jaden Francois and Henry Gray and guys like that. So Gould, I think, on his own, to me, is an intriguing transfer, or I'm sorry, an intriguing signee, but also this idea that he's probably, and I'd have to look this up to be sure, but he's got to be one of Fisher's more highly rated recruits that he's brought to campus that has a chance to stay on campus and be a guy. So I think when you have that combination of where he is to start and what he could be in 3 years under Fisher, that's somebody to me that could be a pretty impactful safety for Nebraska for a number of years.
Yeah.
So Jaden Gould's my number 5.
I'm going to wait and see on almost every freshman defensive back they recruit because it just hasn't gone that well.
No.
They haven't been able to land too many. Palmer was actually my 5th. My 4th is Brian Buccini, the punter from Montana. This is a reflection of what I think the value of punting is. I think this guy has a chance to be a really good punter, and I think he has a chance to really help Nebraska out because I think punting has been a huge issue for the program for a while now. Just the inability to trust that somebody's going to go out there and uncork a really good punt. The inability to, when it's 4th and 14 at the opponent's 46, to put the opponent inside the 10, and you're punting them to the end zone, or, you know, as Daniel Cherney did and against Illinois, punting from like the Illinois 44 to the 23 or something. I don't know. He's going on medical, so his career at Nebraska is over. Because once you go on that, you can transfer somewhere else, but man, that the injury is some of it. I just don't know that I don't know that he was schooled as a punter. So I think Brian Buccini is going to be very helpful. He's got kind of a cocky. There's just a certain swagger to him that's interesting, and I think players, if he's good, will warm to that. So he's my 4. Palmer's my 5. Who's your 6?
My 6 is Buccini as well.
Okay.
And for a lot of the same reasons that you said. I mean, it's special teams, particularly punting, has been a liability for them for a number of years. So if you can find someone like him who can boom a punt, who can, you know, hit one directionally into the corner, set someone up inside their 10, I mean, it's going to be a huge advantage. And you know, Nebraska's defense has been better, but it's still not something that you can lean on entirely when an opponent's starting at their 30 or their 40 every time out. So Buccini, I think somebody who can make special teams go from really bad to, at the very least, kind of holding serve with whoever they're facing.
That was your 6.
It was.
Do you know what my 6 is?
I don't.
Do you want to guess what high school player it would be that no one else had?
Maybe it's the guy who I considered for my 6. Was it Evans Jenkins?
It was not.
Okay.
It's Chase Androff,
Okay.
the tight end
Okay.
from Lakeville South. I'm looking to see if anybody else put him on there. I don't think they did. Chase Androff. Why? Well, one, I think Sean Beckton recruits good athletes. I don't think he gives offers to people who can't do it. 2, I think Androff has an opportunity, if he's not a tight end, to be a tackle. I think he has the physical characteristics. 3, this guy, at least on film, and Lakeville South's in a pretty good whatever, he's athletic. He is big and physical and fast. And like, you know, what's the right word? He could block. And he's just got a explosiveness off the ball. I would describe him as, I don't know what he's going to play, but the athleticism and the explosiveness there is certainly different. It's comparable somewhere between Jack Stoll and Cam Jurgens. It's notable. This is not a joke add-on. Remember, they got this kid a long time ago.
Yep.
Way back in the early whatever. And this was not this wasn't a late ad. This wasn't a guy. We just found out who he is. No, it was. They added him a long time ago. He might even have been the first commit. I think there's things to like about Chase Androff's game. I really do, and I think people we'll just see what happens. And I could be wrong about that, but I like big bodies that have a twitch to them.
And you cannot lie.
You cannot get enough guys like that on your football team. You just can't. Like, the more guys you get that are big and got a little bit of woof to them, get them. Because somewhere they're going to play. Whether it's an interior line, the NFL's its own thing. But in college, you get those guys on the field, and all of a sudden things are happening because they get places quick. And I think one thing I would say about Nebraska football, and we'll talk about this 100 different times before the season, is how many players do they have who are big men who have the twitchy, psst, and they don't have a lot of that.
And Jurgens was the obvious
Jurgens
example.
was it.
Yeah.
I think Corcoran, before he got hurt, had some of that. They've got to find more, and apparently Rayo is going to coach them in that kind of way in order to have more of it. But I think you need more guys who are just, are aggressive, quick, violent. And I think they just need more of them. And that sometimes you got to recruit bodies that then become positions. And I do think Gage Stinger has some of that. I think Ernest Hausman is a big kid. I think how much weight can you put on Ernest Hausman? Can you put him at outside linebacker? Can you put him at pass rusher? When you watch Nebraska's pass rushers, gosh, we've been watching them for so many years, Evan. They just don't quite get home.
They don't.
They're technically sound. They play hard. There are times when Nelson's got a great motor. He might have a great move. He gets inside. He gets to the QB. But, now that JoJo's gone, they don't have that twitch. And they've got to find people. Maybe Blaze Gunnerson can be that guy, but they've got to find people who just make plays. And, I think they've got actually a lot of guys at skill that can do that. I question whether they've got the guys in the lines to be able to affect that kind of change. We'll see.
I'll give you a couple other quick ones. So my sleeper was Malcolm Hartzog.
Me too.
And, I think back to Eric Chenander's story about him recruiting the area and his name coming up over and over again as somebody who stood out. Reminds me of Cam Taylor-Britt's story a little bit, a guy who played quarterback, who played kind of all over the place, was a returner in the punt and kickoff game, and just, I think Nebraska defensive coaches really want to find those defenders who have had the ball in their hands a lot and who have played the offensive side and played all over. Hartzog did that, I believe, at a lower classification than most of the players that they got. So, some of the numbers really stand out because the competition level wasn't super great. But the athleticism is really intriguing.
Comically dominant.
He'll probably end up being a really good corner for them, or could end up being a really good corner for them. But just his well-rounded background is really fascinating to me. And again, coming from a place where everybody kind of knew who he was and thought he was kind of a secret, and Nebraska unearthed him. He's just a fascinating kind of profile for me to see what he does at a major college level.
Yeah, me too. I agree with everything you just said. A couple other guys that are interesting to me: Jalil Martin, switched positions in high school. Probably a little bit of a 2 years from now, he's going to be a different guy. Our intern Chad Mays is writing a story on him. He talked to Jalil and Jalil's coach, so that'll be coming up soon. You mentioned Hausman. Stanger to me is really interesting player. Where is he going to play? What is he going to do? Is he Seth Malcolm, who I think Seth's going to have a long journey at inside linebacker, or can Stanger play, the nickel spot? Jake Applegate is a great athlete. Where do you play him? Another deal, where is he an outside linebacker? Can you actually play him at receiver? He was probably better in high school at receiver, but he's probably more impactful at outside linebacker. And then the kid from Irvington, New Jersey. Now,
yeah, Justin Evans.
I don't know what that's going to look like. He's an explosive wrestler. So he's, not a beast per se. He's a little smaller than some of those guys, and he's pretty good. Quickness, short area quickness. I think in college football, and I get it. You watch the NFL and you see these huge guys playing line. Those are the creme de la creme. Those are the guys that are 319 pounds who can run, 4.7s. I'd rather have the defensive lineman who runs a 4.6 and is a little undersized in college football than the guy that runs a 5.4 and is 345 pounds. Like, I get it that you want to run the big guys, but it's, you're not looking for necessarily the giantest. You're looking for athletes. You're looking for bodies. You're looking for people who can move around fast. I think Penn State over the years has done actually a pretty good job of getting bodies and then just putting them on the field. And I feel like they've been pretty good at doing that. I think Nebraska's got to continue to get better there. Of like, yeah, you want big people on the field, but what you want are great athletes. You want people who can move. And, if they're a little shorter, well, so be it. That's okay. So we'll see. We'll see where they go with it. At this moment, the concern, I think, on the defensive line is real. They're going to have to – that's Ty Robinson, Casey Rogers.
That's kind of it in terms of experience. Nash Heltmacher.
Yeah, he's not. He's no more experienced than a Masai Newsome.
No, he's not experienced, but
yeah, so
he'll be in the mix.
He's really got to step up. Hutmaker's in there, obviously. Newsome's in there. Buckley's in there. Weaver. Yep. Who knows? The recruiting was, and Hutmaker was effectively recruited by Mike Dawson. The recruiting under Toyota didn't always coalesce because I think the guys that he wants to recruit live on the West Coast, and they don't want to come here. Yeah. They just generally don't want to come here.
Right.
That's true for the offensive linemen and the defensive linemen. They don't want to come to Nebraska. Now, that doesn't mean some of them didn't come, but they're guys that you really haven't heard of and didn't have that many offers. And that's because the really elite players on the West Coast stay on the West Coast. They stay there.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't come west. And then they got Wyndon Huahuli, who I think would have been a good player, and he's gone. So that's one of those situations that was a little bit of a miss, and we could kind of tell that the recruiting issue at defensive line was going to be there. And now that Tuiotti's left, they have to have a course correction really fast.
Yeah. Well, let's end it with this then, Sam. So the breakdown in the class, depending on the numbers, I used 28 for scholarship players that they brought in. 15 high school, 3 junior college, 10 out of the portal. So when you look at the class ranking, and we're always accustomed to sort of seeing where they fall in these recruiting services at the end of the cycle, it's a little different this year, right? Because these class rankings don't account for the transfers, generally speaking. So
right.
Nebraska's high school and junior college class, which is 18 players, high as 38 by I think it's Rivals, and and into the low 40s by the other services. Mm-hmm. So like the saying has always been, you judge your recruiting class 3 or 4 years down the road and see how it turned out. Because of how things are shifting with the portal, how do you plan to evaluate how this class does? Is it a year or two? Is it still 3 or 4? How is this different from what it's been?
I'm probably going to separate the groups. I'll continue to have the recruiting class be the recruiting class and the transfers be the transfers. I think that I've advocated that Nebraska have about a 50-50 blend there, half transfer, half recruiting class, which inevitably means smaller classes unless you think you can get some really elite players in here. So I'll probably evaluate those separately. Every transfer you bring in, you hope starts. They're not all going to start, but you hope they do. And so ideally, you would love a hit rate there in terms of to be, how many transfers are there? 10?
That they brought in, yeah, 10.
10. And we don't count DeAndre Jackson.
Correct.
Now, so it's only 10.
Right.
You'd hope that 7 of those guys start. Right. The only ones who don't start right away are Chuba Purdy, and I'm not sure either one of the linemen will start, but one of the linemen, and then I don't see Tommy Hill and Omar Brown starting.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. But you hope everybody else is a significant contributor. So 60 to 70% hit rate there. With recruiting classes, anything over 50 is a bonus, Nebraska's been batting lower than that. I mean, I think the 2017 class was 30%. So you want about half or more than half to hit on those classes, and you'd love for some elite players in that group. I think they've got to get better on the lines, Evan. I've said that a couple times.
Yeah.
So, I think there's some skilled guys in there who can do a few things. I do think A.J. Allen has the potential to be really, really good, but you need linemen. You can't. Shatel and I were talking about this yesterday. You can't call what you can't block.
Mm-hmm.
You can call it, but if you can't block it, then the call is worthless. So Nebraska's got to get better at blocking so that they can call more things. And on defense, they got to get better at up front so that they have to call less. And they can just play a base defense that keeps, that maybe creates some more turnovers. So
Yeah.
I'll continue to look at them separately.
Okay. I agree with all that. I suppose my last thought would be I kind of echo what Tom was saying earlier about I get the sense that the transfer portal will benefit Nebraska for a number of reasons. Maybe one of those being NIL opportunities. That's possible. But I think in talking with a lot of these guys, their criteria for choosing schools changes so much between when they're 17, 18 years old to when they're 20, 21, 22.
Right.
I can't tell you how many guys said that this cycle that, man, when they were in high school, it was, I want to win games. I like the facilities. I want the big name. And then it becomes stuff like playing opportunity. It becomes stuff like what's the relationship with the people? Who are the people in the building? Not just the coaches, but what are your teammates like? What are the support people like? What's the nutritionist like? Like all those things were things that a lot of these players considered the second time around, and I feel like those are strengths of Nebraska a lot more than the glitz and the glam or even the weather. And so, I do get the sense, and Tom also made a great point that like had the transfer portal in its current iteration not existed this year, I think the sense around the program would be a lot more grim, or a lot more guarded. I mean, this
because they would have lost a lot of the players they lost either way.
Mm-hmm.
They lost 17. A lot of those guys were going.
Right.
They weren't portal. I don't think Adrian Martinez was coming back.
Probably not. So,
I just don't.
3 years ago, if the Nebraska had been in this situation, you're talking about bringing in a freshman group, maybe a couple of JUCOs, and pinning your hopes on, man, some freshmen better break out. Suddenly, you're able to plug that in a free agent way that they've never been able to. So it adds a much different vibe to what's going on in 2022.
Let me give you a picture of this just for a second. I want to go to the 2026 class or the 2020 class and just rattle off these names for you. And this will give you a sense of the difference between just 2 years ago and now. So they had 26 regular recruits that year. Here they are. Corcoran, Betts, Green, Fleming, Gray, Manning, Joseph, Francois, Smothers, Morrison, Brown, Gunnarsson, Hutmaker, Malga Clements, Nixon, Scott, Kahn, Butler, Black, Marquise Black, Nico Cooper, Ronald Delancey, Payne, Riley, Gifford, Lynham, Cherney. There's more guys who have left in that group than have started. The only regular starters in that group are, I guess, Omar Manning and kind of Betts and Corcoran. Right?
Yeah, generally speaking.
There weren't any others. And they've had a bunch of guys leave. Here were the transfers that year. Culp, Nwili, Ezra Miller, Jared Bubak, Zach Schlager. That's the difference. And when I read the names for the transfers this year, whole different group of player, whole different class of player. And Willie actually became a starter. Culp's gone now. Miller has not done much. Bubak left, and Schlager, I think, left too. So what's changed about the program, I think, is pretty significant at this point. I think you have a very different kind of transfer coming in. That started last year with Teray, but it's only going to accelerate now. Trey Palmer fits in with all the receivers. And I'm not trying to knock Levi Falk when I say this, but Levi Falk, when he came to Nebraska, was like, okay, who's this guy from South Dakota? That will not be Trey Palmer's story.
Right.
At all. Like, he's going to come in and try to be the star. I don't think he will be. I think it'll be Manning and Betts. But Palmer will come in with a confidence that indicates he's the best player in the room. And I don't think that was probably true even when Teray came in, even though he probably was. All right.
Well, we'll probably be back in a couple of weeks. Leading up to spring football practice starts February 28th. There's a lot of position stuff to break down. I'm sure we'll get into that in a couple of weeks. Baseball starts on the 18th, so we'll have a little preview for that as well. Basketball will be winding down. Plenty to discuss. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the optimism of signing day, and we'll talk to you soon.